There's the issue then, as we become very familiar with trying to keep ourselves safe, is that those mechanisms become really safe. Even if they suck, even if they're painful, when we're familiar with it, it's easier to just accept, and we convince ourselves that this is the way I am.
We just justify it. It's just who I am. It's fine.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's not.
Welcome back to Unapologetic Rabble-Rousers. I'm DocShellie.
And I'm Carla Lewis. And today...
What do we have in store today, Carla?
We're having a real conversation like we never do. But today is about the parts of ourselves that we've mistaken for identity. So we're titling this one, Your Exit Wounds Are Not Personality Traits. So we're going to build on what we talked about, the messy middle in our last episode, that season between leaving something behind and stepping into what's next. And here's the truth. When you spend enough time in that doorway, some of your old wounds start speaking up. So what we want to do is talk about reclaiming your voice from these old narratives that may pop up and they just don't serve you anymore. So let's settle in. Let's dig into this, Shelley.
Where are we going to start?
Well, how about this?
How about this?
Coping strategies. Identifying the kind of coping strategies that we have and being able to, number one, honor them because they served in some capacity somehow along the way, and then let them go, release them. At this point, what we have been talking about, doing some important, sacred, deep work because we are moving through in a transformational journey. We took a leap. We visited the waiting room. We've done transformation work there in peace and in stillness. And as we're preparing in that process of transformation, things start kicking up. There are things that come out like ghosts from the closets saying, oh, wait a minute. So what are some of the coping strategies? How do we get in touch with those and thank them for their service and then get rid of them?
I think you brought something up that I think is important to dig into, perhaps before we go to coping mechanisms. So I'm going to throw this out there. What are those things that come up? You just said things come up and you're like, whoa, is there truth in this? What are some of those things that might come up that we need a coping mechanism for?
Okay.
Does that track?
It absolutely tracks. So you're asking me, and I think the first one that comes up would be something related to self-doubt.
No.
I'm just saying.
Not self-doubt.
Okay, well, I was probably wrong.
Gaslighting.
Yeah. Seriously. No, really. So when we cope with the stress of reaching out to do something new, and as we're doing the reach, it's almost like what we're going to grab onto might be hot. And so there's this hesitation. And the fact that as we're reaching out for this something new, there's going to be tapes. Oh, did I just date myself or what? Anybody needed help in figuring out I've been around a while. So there's these old messages, these old experiences that you say, ooh, remember the last time you did that? And so what I want to do is remind you about that. I want to remind you about how it didn't go so well last time. And so maybe you shouldn't quite go all the way. Maybe you should just go a little part of the way. So in the case of self-doubt, Michelle, the notion that I don't really know if I can be successful, the question could also be, I don't even really know if I want to be successful. And so what might be some of those coping mechanisms would be, you know what, I'm going to wait a minute. I'm going to wait a while. I'm going to do some more research. I'm going to go make sure this is something that I really, really want to do. So first thing that comes to my mind is the hesitation, wait, I think I need more information. I need to do some more research or something along those lines. How about for you?
Mhm. I think some of those things that come up are I have trust issues. I overthink everything. I'm just not good with this kind of stuff. I don't like conflict. And my favorite one that I get often as a single woman, you must be afraid of commitment.
Oh, judgment, judgment.
And here, I just listened to the Simon Sinek thing the other day. I love me some Simon Sinek, but
Hmm.
he talked about not being in a relationship, not being in a romantic relationship for a very long time. And he said people would always say to him, "Oh, you must have commitment issues." And then he spoke with a friend who was in a really bad marriage for 16 years. And she shared with him that she probably should have only stayed for a year. And he was like, I have lifelong friends. I don't have commitment issues. I make commitments to the friends in my life. I just don't need, I know what I want in a long term relationship. And so until that comes along, it's not about commitment, it is about knowing what I'm worth and what I'm worth in a relationship.
Okay.
I'm not going to stay in a relationship for 16 years to prove I have a commitment ability when
Hmm.
it's a 15-year marriage that should have ended. It should have been a 1 year marriage, not a
Right.
16-year marriage. So it was a really interesting take from a very healthy human being who is confident in who he is and how he shows up for the people around him, and everyone else going, you have commitment issues.
People are so quick to jump to to those kinds of conclusions, which
Right.
I believe says more about them than it does about the person they're directing those comments to.
But for a long time, as a person who's been told I have commitment issues, you start to believe it. I don't have commitment issues. I'm particular and I know what I want. But those comments, those things that are said like facts, those are those wounds, if you will, those exit wounds.
Hmm.
And it
Okay.
comes from gaslighting, it comes from rejection, it comes from abandonment, it comes from betrayal, much of the things that you just said. So when we think about coping mechanisms, we have to understand that coping mechanisms are not character traits. We Coping mechanisms might look like hyper independence because it helped you maybe helped you survive instability. It might be people pleasing because it kept you safe from conflict, which, God forbid we have conflict, or maybe it kept you safe from rejection. There's a reason we have coping mechanisms. Perfectionism might
Mm.
have shielded you from criticism. So they were smart tactics. They were probably adaptive tactics and often necessary. So they're not flaws, but they are echoes of who we used to be to survive.
So also things like
It goes back to that episode we did on the armor. Do I still
yes,
need to wear this armor?
yes, yes. I'm an introvert, which is maybe play for I don't really feel safe speaking up. So I'm just going to say I'm an introvert or being a control freak
Mhm.
versus look, I've been burned before. And so, yeah, I am going to maintain control as best I can right here.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, how do these wounds morph into our identity?
I think because we think they're character traits and they're not. They're mechanisms. They are not a character trait. We can change them. They once protected us, much like an armor does, but we can take that off.
So, it's like if you've survived something long enough, it feels like that is a part of your personality because
Mhm.
the survival was, of course, we know our brains are trying to keep us safe, and
Mhm.
survival is a good piece of that.
Right.
So it becomes a part of us. It feels like it is a part of us.
Mhm.
It's a part of who we are. So there's the issue then as we become very familiar with those exercises of trying to keep ourselves safe, is that they become safe. Those mechanisms become really safe. Even if they suck, even if they're painful, when we're familiar with it, it's easier to just accept. And you used the word earlier that we convince ourselves that this is the way I am. This
We
is
just justify it.
That's the word.
It's just who I am. It's fine.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. It's not. The instincts, they keep us safe. And they kept us safe. But if we leave them unchecked, they're going to keep us small. They're going to,
Mhm.
it's like they shrink us, they compress us into being
Absolutely.
much less than we are if we were able to say, thank you for what you did for me. Well, let's be done. Really interested in peeling that layer of compression off. Oh,
I think if there's a label that you have, I don't know, we'll do use the introvert thing. I'm clearly I am not.
oh no.
I'm just an introvert. It's just the way I am. In order to change that, you have to do it in small incremental steps so that your brain believes you. If I were to go from I'm just an introvert and I try to convince myself that I'm an extrovert, my brain's going to go, the F you are. Like, no, that is not true. You are a liar. And we're not even going to go down that path.
Yes.
Versus, I'm just an introvert could be rewritten as a possibility of I'm learning to use my voice in an important way. It could be I'm going to experiment speaking up in one meeting this week. It could like anything, but it has to be an incremental thing that your brain can go, yeah, all right, we'll try that. But you can't just flip the script 100, 300, and well, that would be 360. No, 180. You can't flip it 180 and your brain is going to be like, yeah, let's do it. It's going to throw up all sorts of caution flags.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. So part of the question then is what old stories are we carrying like a name tag? Introvert, perfectionist, it's just the way I am. And if what would happen if I stripped away my defense mechanisms? Who would I be? Who
Who would you be?
who would I be? Probably all the more insufferable. But okay, you could
But
disagree.
if
No.
but if we recognize if we recognize that coping mechanisms are not our character, it makes it a lot easier to let it go
Yeah,
and recognize, like you said, you served a purpose. Thank you very much. We're moving on.
that's right.
They're echoes of who you had to be in order to get through the crap that you were dealing with.
Mm.
And so the healing really starts with the question of, do I still need to do this?
How is it serving me? How is it serving me?
How is it not serving me?
How is it holding me back?
Whole lot of questions you can roll through there.
And, what a fun way to spend that quiet, still time in the waiting room to be able to say, okay, I brought a lot of stuff with me in here. Opportunity to take a look, to say, okay, what's really me and what have I been carrying around just because it's familiar? But if we had a good sit down, you could say, you know what? You're actually an old wound. And I think it's time for me to heal that. And we can be done. We
Mhm.
can be done.
As you were talking, this popped in my head. Those stories that you're telling yourself, I'm just an introvert, I'm not enough, blah, 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 whatever they are. Think about those as actually being a scar, not the truth. It's a
Mm.
scratch on the surface of who you are. It is not a truth of who you are. And I will add another thought that I had as you were talking too is we're not the wound. We are the healers.
Mm.
Like just flipping that script in your head reduces the, oh my God, like I can't move on with my life because I'm an introvert. I will never be able to stand on that stage because I'm an introvert, but I want to be a public speaker. Like it creates cognitive dissonance. But if we can reduce the power and think about it, like that's just a scratch. It is not the truth of who I am. I am not that wound. I am healing that wound. It changes what your brain believes. It can change how you show up to the world around you. It's
And,
it's reframing those wounds into wisdom.
oh, and how far you would go with that, simple to speak about, absolutely crucial as a focus of your attention. Think how far you could go. Think of
Mm-hmm.
who you would become if you weren't walking around with those name tags that are the coping mechanisms that
Yeah.
aren't you. They're not you. They're not who
Yeah.
you are.
No. And we've all earned the right to move forward lighter, freer, and more of who we are, not less of who we are.
I'm Carla Lewis.
I'm DocShellie. We will see you next time.
Think how far you could go. Think of who you would become if you weren't walking around with those name tags that are the coping mechanisms that aren't you. They're not you. They're not who you are.
No. And we've all earned the right to move forward lighter, freer, and more of who we are, not less of who we are.